Mahabarat, Episode 15, House of Wax. In the last class, we saw how Pandavas paid Dakshina to Dronacharya. Pandavas were a huge success amongst their people in Hastinapur. All the people of Hastinapur wanted Pandavas to be the next king. So, Dhritarashtra, having no other go, made Pandava's eldest brother Yudhishthira as the king of Hastinapur. Let's see what happens next. Did Yudhishthira continue to be the king of Hastinapur? Did Dhritarashtra wholeheartedly gave the kingdom to Yudhishthira? Let's see.
One day Dhritarashtra called upon Yudhishthira and said, "You and your brothers have been working too hard. You have been constantly fighting wars and hardly had any rest. I think you should take a vacation. Why don't you take a trip to the beautiful city of Varnavatra? I hear a great festival is underway in Varnavatra. Kings and their representatives from all over the country are attending this festival. Why don't you and your brothers go to Varnavatra and spend a few days there as representatives of Hastinapur? You can take your mother Kunti with you. You can take rest and also you will enjoy the festivities." Yudhishthira was surprised to hear of this proposal. He suspected that something must be wrong. But he knew that he wouldn't be able to decline the offer either. So he humbly accepted the proposal and said, "Uncle, your wish is our command. We'll soon leave for Varnavatra." Duryodhana was delighted to hear the news. He never expected that his plan would get such a great start. He called upon his trusted confidant Purochana and instructed him, "Go to Varnavatra right away and build a house for the Pandavas, but build it with highly flammable materials, a house that would burn down to ashes in minutes when struck with a tiny spark. But remember, no one should suspect a thing. When the house is built, invite the Pandavas to stay there, and when they settle down..." Duryodhana gestured with his hands the action of lighting a fire. Evil Prorachana right away knew what his master was asking for. He grinned and said, "Don't worry, Prince Duryodhana. I will make sure your mission succeeds." Duryodhana said, "Please do, and I promise you, you will never have any dearth of wealth. Now go and start your work." Purochana took few attentions and rushed towards Varnavatra. In a short period of time, they built a beautiful house made with highly flammable materials like wood, sawdust, lac, and wax. When the Pandavas, along with their mother Kunti, arrived in Varnavatra, Purochana welcomed them to their new house. But the moment Yudhishthira entered, he knew he was stepping into a death trap. A faint but indistinguishable odor of lac and wax told him that Vidura's warning was not unfounded. Just before the Pandavas were about to leave for Varnavatra, Vidura came to know of this conspiracy through his spies in the palace. But it was too late to do anything but to warn Yudhishthira. As the Pandavas were about to mount their chariots, Vidura spoke to Yudhishthira in a foreign language which only the two of them knew. He said, "One who knows the enemy's plans should work on the ways to counter him. Remember, there are more ways than one to kill one enemy. A fire can burn down a forest but can hardly harm those who live underground. Like a mole, they can escape through a fire through an underground tunnel. One who can navigate reading stars and knows his ways can not only protect himself but can also save the others. Do you understand?" Yudhishthira said, "I understand." On their way to Varnavatra, Yudhishthira looked very concerned and thoughtful. Kunti asked him, "What are you thinking of, my son? What did Vidura say to you?" Yudhishthira said, "Vidura warned us there will be an attempt to murder us. Most likely, our house will be set on fire and we will be burned down with the house. He suggested that we plan for our escape. Inside the house, Yudhishthira explained the situation to his brothers. Bhima was quite upset. He asked, "Why did you agree to live in this house when you knew perfectly well of Duryodhana's plans? Let us go back to Hastinapur and demand an explanation from Duryodhana." Yudhishthira asked him to calm down. He said, "We don't have any proof yet. If we accuse them now, they will surely deny and blame us for suspecting them and causing ill feelings in the family. I suggest we play along, and at the opportune moment, we will burn down the house ourselves and escape." The same day, a man arrived and met Yudhishthira. He was an expert tunnel digger and was sent by Vidura to dig a tunnel out of the house. And so secretly he dug a deep and long tunnel from inside one of the bedrooms leading out into the forest. At night, the Pandava brothers and Kunti would sleep in the tunnel while one of the brothers would stay awake on guard. During the day, the Pandavas will explore the city of Varnavatra and plan for an escape route, but Purochana was clever too. For almost a year, he showed no signs of agnosticism towards the Pandavas. Rather, he was too kind to them and served them like a loyal servant to earn their trust. He stayed in one of the rooms and took care of all the household tasks. One day, Yudhishthira called his brothers and said, "I think now is the time to make our move, else Purochana can strike any time. I have learned from Vidura that Duryodhana has already sent his signal." That evening, the Pandavas arranged for a grand feast. Sumptuous food and drink were served to the guests. Purochana helped himself to quite a few pitchers of wine and soon fell asleep in his room. Little after midnight, when the entire city was in deep slumber, the Pandavas put the house on fire and slipped through the tunnel under the house. The highly inflammable house, made of black wax and wood and sawdust, burst into flames within minutes. Nothing was left but a huge pile of smoldering ashes. Purochana too was burned alive in the house in his sleep. Along with Purochana died a group of 5 tribal men and their mother. The night before, they had come to attend the feast, and after having a great meal and a few bottles of wine, they lied down in a corner of the house and were fast asleep. Unfortunately, the fire killed them too. Next morning, when the people of Varnavatra found the charred bodies of 5 men and women, they figured those must be of the Pandavas. They all blamed their fate for this unfortunate accident. The news soon reached Hastinapur and deep sorrow engulfed the city. Bhishma, Drona, Kripa couldn't believe their ears. How could such gallant warriors be killed in a petty fire? Dhritarashtra, Duryodhana and his brothers, they all openly lamented the loss of the Pandavas, but inside they were bursting with joy. They declared a month-long mourning and, and donated a large amount of wealth to the Brahmins and, and the poor, who in turn praised the glory of the Kurus. In fact, since the departure of the Pandavas, Duryodhana has been trying to appease the citizens of Hastinapur, and now the death of the Pandavas gave him the opportunity to win their sympathy. Only Vidura knew that the Pandavas were safe and sound, but he kept his mouth shut and patiently waited for their return. The Pandavas, along with their mother Kunti, came out of the tunnel into a dense forest outside the city. They followed the stars and ran towards the south. Kunti was getting tired. She was not accustomed to walk the forest, and that too at night. She often tripped and fell on the uneven ground. Bhima said, "Mother, please let me carry you." She didn't even have strength to object. Bhima lifted Kunti on his shoulders and then said, "Brothers, let me carry you too. Then we can move much faster." With his superhuman strength, Bhima lifted his four brothers on his two arms, and the son of wind ran through the forest, bulldozing through the trees and boulders along the way to carve his path. Soon they were miles away from the city. At dawn, they reached the banks of the Ganges River. They walked down the river bank to find a shallow spot to cross the river. Suddenly, they saw a large boat on the river and the boatman waving at them. The boatman introduced himself to Yudhishthira and said, Vidura has asked me to wait for you, and I have been waiting here for months. He asked me to take you down the river to any destination you want. He was speaking the same language which Vidura had used earlier with Yudhishthira. The Pandavas had no reason to distrust him. The boat took them down the river Ganges and dropped them off the other side, next to a deep forest. Bhima once again picked up Kunti and his brothers and trampled to the forest. At dusk, Kunti asked him to stop. I am very thirsty, my son. Can you arrange for some water? Bhima gently put her down and said, Mother, wait here with my brothers. I will get some water for you. Bhima wandered through the forest and found a lake. He fetched some water for his mother and brothers, but when he returned, they were fast asleep. He didn't wake them. Rather, he sat on a rock nearby and stayed awake to guard them.